Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, legends. I hope you're all well. And it's probably obvious I'm back in my studio. I'm back in Australia, in the safety of Australia and home, which is always nice. Now, I'm going to refer to some notes here throughout this. But as the title, suggests, I want to talk about the, propaganda on both sides of this war. And a lot of people call me out that I'm a paid-off propaganda machine. Now, all I do is report on what I see and people that I talk to. And as far as being paid off by someone, I don't really know who is paying me off, whether it's definitely not the KGB or CIA, or no one's paying me off. I somewhat wish someone was, because the last couple of trips have cost me tens of thousands of dollars. You know, coming from Australia is fucking expensive for almost 3 months. So I'm definitely not paid off. But I'm also very aware that there is propaganda on both sides of this. And this is what I wanted to talk about. But I just want to put in the initial piece on the opening is that I actually did apply for DPR accreditation in Russia to go and report also on the Russian side. Everything has two sides, and I think, it's to be fair, media is to report on both. Now, the difference is Russia gave me accreditation, but then when I filled a visa out, which a visa from Australia to Russia is fucking long, it was like 15 pages, they approved my accreditation. They said, yep, you're accredited to come. And then my visa to actually enter, then they flat out denied. Now, I don't know why, but they didn't let me. Now, I will say that Ukraine was happy for me to come in visa-free and also give me accreditation to film and do whatever. But there are some restrictions on what you're allowed to film and I guess where you're allowed to go. And that's something I want to talk about. And this was my, most frustrating thing on this last trip, and probably one of the big reasons that I cut this short, or the last trip shorter than I wanted, is because I just wasn't getting the access that I would have liked. And I don't believe there's some grand conspiracy around this, but this is an information war. I'm not fucking immune to that. Like, of course, the information is so important of gathering, support of citizens around the world to support the war effort, as it's taxpayers' money coming from the US and from Australia, and people do push back against that, and whether rightfully or wrongfully, it doesn't matter. People do support, don't support, whatever. But you have to agree with me that the information campaign from Ukraine has been absolutely groundbreakingly successful. Like, look at all the people's profile pictures. It's been in the media now for, I believe, about 13 weeks. Nothing trends that long in the media. And, but it's easy to sell because at the end of the day, one country invaded the other. And on the surface, the one that invades is in the wrong. It just is. It's like throwing the first punch. But from then on, then it became very hard to report on. In the beginning of this, I could, report on and film whatever the fuck I wanted. And around the capitals and stuff, you can. But access to the front line is basically zero. And I know people will say to me, but such and such journalist is on the front line. Well, it depends what you call the front line. From what I've seen, from what I guess you and me probably think, is the front line is that last line of troops before you have ground and then Russian troops. That's what we would call the front line. What I guess is considered front line in this is anything within artillery range, which it could be 10, 20 kilometres. That is like a frontline area. So the term last line is being used a lot. And access to the last line, I seriously do not know a single journalist who has actually got access to the last line. And whether this is something you can, comment and let me know what you believe. Whether this is to protect Western media being killed or media in general being killed, as I believe the number is 29 journalists have been killed, to reduce, operational security leaks as far as like where positions are, reporting on that, or if it is to maintain the narrative that people that the Ukrainian government want to uphold of the absolute Russia is evil and Ukraine is winning. Because, and this is something I can't report on at the front, but this is how you can control narratives around this, because Ukraine don't release a single statistic of how many of their soldiers have been killed, of their vehicles being killed, whatever. It's really up in the air. And anyone who says they know is it's completely sort of just falsified, being like, yeah, I believe it's this much. No one really knows a solid number, and we may never know a solid number. And it's been very widely reported on that the numbers that Ukraine and Western media reporting of Russian deaths are greatly sort of overestimated. And very few are actually verify that it's that many. You know, things like, oh, there's 100 planes killed, but there was only to be verified that actually 15 have been down. Things like that. Things like the Russian warship that was sunk, that, 2 weeks later was seen again in the ocean. So it wasn't sunk. But it's also, war is messy. It is war. It is incredibly messy. And, no side in war is that innocent. Yes, in this there is an attacking force and a defending force. So it is, pretty much like, well, the invaders are the bad guys. But what I'm saying in this is war is messy. But it's also important to realise that none of this suffering, death, tragedy, homes and lives being destroyed would have happened if Russia on the 24th of February did not invade another country. But it is driving me insane that, it drove me insane when I was over there, that the freedom press was not as free as that I would like. I would like to be able to report on everything and anything and everything. And I do. Everything I see, I film and I report and I make videos on. But if I physically can't get into an area, then, it's one of those things. And people might say, well, walk around the checkpoint. Well, everything is mined. Everything is absolutely just mined to shit. And I'm not losing my legs trying to just walk 10Ks in somewhere. And I know people will say things like, and people comment this on every single video about, what about Patrick Lancaster? And I guess there's another gentleman reporting from the Russian side. I don't know Patrick. I've actually reached out to him, but he's never got back to me. Patrick is, infamously, depending how you look at it, reporting from the Russian side. But everyone I've talked to about Patrick, everyone says that he's on the payroll of Russia. And I don't know this. I can't verify that. But he's also been in this area for years and years, and I guess hasn't left. So whether it's by, I shouldn't say chance or luck that he's there, because he's obviously been there and been filming for years now. But yeah, he has access that I guess no one else has gotten. But I'm very, very suspicious on, I guess, the background of him, what he's actually allowed to do, because he has filmed videos that are straight up propaganda as well. Like these interviews with, Western soldiers that are obviously reading documents, because you can tell that they're reading also out spelling mistakes in the documents and things like this. So if I could go and film where he is, I would. But, to call me a propagandist, I don't believe that I am, because no one is persuading what I put out at all. I film what I see, and, I actually consume zero mainstream media. Actually, I've been stumped a few times on some interviews where people ask me, like, how is your content different from the mainstream? Because I actually have no idea what the mainstream is actually reporting on. But I believe that a lot of people will call me like a mainstream propagandist, because I guess in this I have a lot of overlap with the mainstream. And a lot of people, somewhat including myself, through COVID, through situations like this, have built an opinion of the mainstream is always telling lies and always is bullshit. And I somewhat agree with that. So I think when it's the boy who cried wolf with the mainstream media, that even if the mainstream now tell the truth, people like myself will be like, that's bullshit. And a lot of people will be like that. And now if there's an overlap between an independent person, like I guess I'll put myself in that basket, and the mainstream, that instantly it's all bullshit. And I think the mainstream has lied so much that it's the boy who cries wolf. Even if they report on the truth that they're seeing, then it's like, well, people just lump it in that that's a lie and are anti whatever. It's like whatever narrative the mainstream have, they're anti it. And if I straight up believe these same people that if the mainstream started being pro-Russia, that then they would turn to pro-Ukrainian. And one of the biggest ones I see is Ukrainian Nazis. Now there is no doubt that there are people that are pro-extreme right wing in Ukraine. There's no doubt of that. Like, I believe my eyes, and if I see, photos were released of someone with swastika tattoos, and I saw one today of a guy with a Hitler tattoo in the Azov battalion, that is extreme right-wing behaviour. But at the same time, I've had very limited exposure to the Azov, like very, very limited, but a lot of exposure to everyday Ukrainians. And I don't side with this idea that people have of everyone's a Nazi there. I believe it's no more than anywhere else in the world. Yeah, Australia has fucking pro-right extremists. We have ultra alt-left extremists too. Both sides. And, I think it's such a small minority that it may seem like more than it is, but I actually, and I would report on that. If I saw it, I'd report on it. So I'm ranting a little bit. But yeah, the way that Ukraine can control the narrative through people being there, people not, is very difficult, and it's annoyed me a lot, and that's one of the reasons I've come home. And it may be because there's so many journalists there. I believe there was 9,000 or 10,000 at the peak journalists in the country. And I guess if one get access, everyone needs access. The next thing, a lot of journalists are fucking idiots too. Walking in the open in the line of fire and doing stupid stuff. And if a journalist gets killed, next thing that's someone else, you're backloading and whatever. So I am actually planning on going back to Ukraine in a number of weeks, hoping that a lot of the mainstream has left by then, and then I can get in. Hopefully, because there's less journalists there, less mainstream, whatever, I may then be able to get more access to the front or that last line. But I will see. And I'll also be working on it. If anyone has any contacts, I'm all bloody ears to go to the Russian side and report from there, as long as I could be completely open and honest about what I see and what I'm allowed to film and whatnot. I'm completely open to actually doing that and that idea, and I think it would give a great second side to this, and debunk some stuff, or it would reaffirm some stuff that I've filmed. I don't know, but I'm open to doing that. I've seen a lot that people think that my interpreter was like a military interpreter. He's not at all. A lot of people in Eastern Europe wear very military style clothing, like, look at this green top that I'm wearing and I'm bloody in Australia. He was not a military translator at all. He was a local gentleman who lives in that area, so he had access to there. He lost his home in that area as well, but he had access there, and because he had like his ID to get into that area, and he spoke English, so I swung him some money, and he took me in, and I could ask and say whatever I want. And people are saying, well, this question was asked weird or whatever in language. I don't speak the language, so yeah, I don't actually know on the ground whether something's being translated 100% correctly to me, but I believe it was, and I don't believe that he had any reason to ask my questions differently or rightfully or wrongfully. But he definitely wasn't military. He really lovely guy. People go, well, you only specifically interviewed that person and this person. Well, not everyone wants to be interviewed. You're in a village that's been occupied for months, and then fought over, and then bloody a cameraman comes in with my big fucking lens and a microphone, and I'm obviously a Westerner. Well, you may think, fuck off. Like, I don't want to be part of your fucking interview just because I've lost everything for you to make a video. And I completely understand that. I'm not going to pressure anyone into an interview. So I speak to the people that will speak to me and let them tell their stories. And if I, interview someone that you don't agree with, it doesn't mean that I agree with that person. I'm willing to speak to anyone and everyone. I'd be as willing to speak to Putin on an interview as I would be to speak to Zelensky. And of course, I'm not big enough to ever have those interviews. But I'd happily speak to anyone and let people make up their own mind. But I just wanted to make this video to, I guess, outline and identify that of course there is bias, because only one country will actually let us in to film, and that country that's let us in has put some restrictions on what we can film and where we're allowed to go. So I'm open to that, and I'm also open to discussion, but I'm definitely not getting paid off. And if anyone knows where these payoff checks come from or where I can cash them, that'd be fantastic, because I would maybe be able to recoup some money from this. But yeah, thank you so much for supporting me and listening to my stuff and my bit of a rant. So yeah, look after yourselves. Enjoy your day, and I'll speak to you soon. Okay, cheers.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.